7 words. That's all it took to bring Oprah Winfrey to her knees in front of 12 million people. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 30 seconds before I spoke those words, I was certain my career was over. Oprah had just delivered the most devastating attack I'd ever faced on live television. She called me a hypocrite, a fraud, a religious fanatic dangerous to society. The audience was turning against me. I could feel their judgment like heat from a fire. She thought she had destroyed me. She thought the man who plays Jesus on television would crumble under her billion-dollar spotlight. She was wrong. What happened next would become the most watched interview clip in television history. 3 major networks tried to bury the footage. Her own production team begged her to cut it from the broadcast. But by then, it was too late. The cameras had captured everything. Here's what nobody expected. I didn't fight back with anger. I didn't defend myself with arguments. Instead, I told her about a 7-year-old boy named Michael who was dying of cancer in a hospital bed in Detroit. And what that little boy said about Oprah would shatter everything she believed about herself. But the real shock came after, when I offered her something she had spent her entire life trying to buy but could never afford. When I spoke 7 simple words that stripped away every wall she had built over 40 years in the spotlight. I watched the most powerful woman in media fall apart on her own stage. And in that moment, both of our lives changed forever. My name is Jonathan Roumie. I play Jesus in The Chosen. And this is the true story of the day Oprah mocked my faith on live television, and what I said that left her completely speechless. If you're ready for this story, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from right now. 3 weeks before that interview, I was kneeling on the floor of my small Chicago apartment, and I was afraid. The call had come that morning. Oprah's producer wanted me for a special about spirituality. They promised it would be a friendly conversation about faith and inspiration, but something in my gut told me this was a trap. You have to understand who I am. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a theologian. I'm an actor from New York who spent 15 years struggling, waiting tables, wondering if God had forgotten about me. My father died believing I would never amount to anything. For years, I thought he was right. Then, The Chosen happened. Suddenly, millions of people were watching me portray the most important figure in human history. Letters poured in from around the world, people telling me the show had saved their marriages, pulled them back from suicide, restored their faith when they had given up on God. But I never forgot who I really was. A broken man saved by grace, nothing more. That night before the interview, I researched Oprah's spiritual empire. What I found broke my heart. $2,000 courses promising divine abundance, partnerships with teachers who mixed ancient wisdom with modern marketing, hundreds of millions of dollars built on selling people the idea that they could become their own gods. I thought about the letters on my kitchen table, real people with real pain looking for real hope, and I thought about what would happen if I stayed silent while someone sold them beautiful lies. I looked around my apartment, the same place I'd lived for 8 years. The crucifix my Lebanese grandmother carved with her own hands, the faded photograph of my father. I owned almost nothing. I had given almost everything away. I knelt on that cold floor and I prayed, not for victory, not for the right words. I prayed for courage to speak truth even if it cost me everything I had built. When I stood up, I knew what I had to do. I was going to walk into the lion's den. I was going to face the most powerful woman in media, and I was going to trust God with the consequences. I had no idea those consequences would change both of our lives forever. The moment I stepped into Harpo Studios, I knew I was in enemy territory. Marble floors stretched in every direction. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings that seemed to reach toward heaven. Photographs covered every wall. Oprah with presidents, with kings, with the most famous faces on earth. Everything screamed power. Everything whispered, "You don't belong here." The green room was worse. It was filled with spiritual teachers clutching their latest books, exchanging business cards, discussing marketing strategies with excitement that made my stomach turn. One man bragged about his 7-figure advance. A woman calculated how many course sales she needed to hit 8 figures by December. I sat in the corner with my worn Bible and wondered what I had gotten myself into. A production assistant approached me with a clipboard. She explained which questions Oprah would ask and coached me on promoting my brand. "Make sure you mention any products you're selling," she said cheerfully. "This audience spends money on spiritual content. This is your chance to capitalize." I told her I wasn't selling anything. She stared at me like I had spoken a foreign language. When my turn came, I walked onto that famous stage carrying nothing but my father's old blazer and the Bible that had seen me through my darkest years. No promotional materials, no talking points, just faith and whatever words God would give me. Oprah greeted me with her legendary warmth, but I saw something behind her eyes: calculation, strategy. She was sizing me up like a chess player studying her opponent. The first question seemed innocent enough. She praised the chosen and asked about my spiritual practices, but I recognized what she was doing. She was trying to fit my faith into her framework: consciousness levels, spiritual evolution, universal energy. I had a choice: play along and survive, or speak truth and face the consequences. I took a breath. "Oprah, I appreciate the question, but I have to be honest. I'm not interested in spiritual practices or consciousness levels. I'm interested in Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and the life." The temperature in that studio dropped 20 degrees. Oprah's smile flickered. The audience shifted uncomfortably. This was not what anyone expected from a guest on her show. I had just drawn a line in the sand on live television, and I could see in Oprah's eyes that she was about to make me pay for it. What happened next would push both of us to our breaking points. Oprah recovered quickly. She was too experienced to show weakness. "That's beautiful, Jonathan," she said smoothly. "And of course, there are many paths to the divine, many ways to connect with that universal love." I shook my head gently. "Oprah, Jesus said he is the way, the truth, and the life, that no one comes to the Father except through him. That's not one path among many. That's the only path." The audience went silent. Oprah's expression hardened. "Surely you don't believe billions of sincere spiritual people are wrong? Isn't that exactly what's dangerous about organized religion?" The question was designed to make me look like a bigot. I could feel the audience turning against me. But I had faced this question before. I leaned forward. "Oprah, if my house is on fire and someone sincerely believes water won't help, their sincerity doesn't change reality. Truth isn't determined by how many people believe it. It's determined by what's actually true." Something flashed in her eyes. Anger. She wasn't used to guests who pushed back. "Let's be honest, Jonathan." Her voice turned sharp. "You've made millions playing Jesus. Isn't it hypocritical to criticize others for monetizing spirituality when you've built your career on it?" The audience perked up. They smelled blood. But Oprah had just made a fatal mistake. She attacked without knowing the truth. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folded paper. "You're right to ask that question. So I brought my bank statement." I held it up. "My balance is $1,800. I give away everything except what I need to survive. Same apartment for 8 years, 15-year-old car, most meals at home because that's what I can afford." Her face went pale. "You see, Oprah, Jesus told his followers to take nothing for the journey. Our treasure should be in heaven, not in building empires on earth," she exploded. "Don't lecture me about humility when you're pretending to be God on television. You're a religious fanatic, and you're dangerous." The outburst shocked everyone. Oprah Winfrey, losing control on her own show. I stood up slowly. "Oprah, 3 days ago, I received a call from a mother in Detroit. Her son Michael is 7 years old. He's dying of leukemia." The studio went completely still. "Michael watches The Chosen every day from his hospital bed. His mother says it's the only thing that gives him peace. He asked me if Jesus really loves sick little boys, if heaven is real, if his parents will be okay when he's gone." Tears began falling in the audience. Then Michael asked me something that broke my heart. He asked if the lady on TV who talks about God really knows Jesus, or if she's just pretending, because she looks sad when she smiles. Oprah's hands began to tremble. I pulled out my phone. "Michael is watching this right now from his hospital bed. Would you like me to call him? So you can tell a dying 7-year-old that his faith is wishful thinking? that Jesus is just one option among many? The challenge hung in the air like thunder before lightning strikes. Every camera was locked on her face. Every person in that audience held their breath. Oprah opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For the first time in her legendary career, she had no words. Then she whispered two words that changed everything. I can't. Her voice was barely audible, but those two words carried the weight of a confession. The woman who had built an empire telling people what to believe suddenly couldn't tell a dying child that his faith was wrong, even though she had spent the last 30 minutes trying to convince millions of adults of exactly that. My voice softened. The battle was over. Now came the harder part. Oprah, I don't think you want to hurt Michael. I think you genuinely want to help people. But somewhere along the way, you started believing you could improve on what Jesus offered. Package it better, make it more comfortable, more profitable. I watched her walls beginning to crack. The problem is, when you try to improve on perfection, you always end up with less. When you try to make truth more appealing to everyone, you end up with something that saves no one. I looked out at the audience. People who had spent years and thousands of dollars chasing enlightenment through courses and programs. You don't need to buy truth. You don't need to earn love. You don't need to achieve your way to God. Jesus offers all of this freely. The only price is admitting you can't save yourself. Oprah's voice cracked. But what about everyone I've helped? The lives I've changed? I'm sure you've helped people, I said gently. Kindness is always valuable. But helping people feel better isn't the same as helping them find eternal hope. The question isn't whether you've done good things. The question is whether you've pointed people to the source of all good, or whether you became a substitute for that source. The words landed like stones in still water. I watched understanding dawn in her eyes, decades of building an empire where she was the answer instead of the signpost. Silence stretched across the studio. Then Oprah asked the question that would change everything. What if you're right? Her voice trembled. What if I've been wrong about everything? The vulnerability was shocking. This was Oprah Winfrey, one of the most powerful people on earth, admitting her entire life might have been built on sand. I looked at this woman who had everything the world promised would bring happiness, and I saw what I had once seen in my own mirror during my darkest years. Someone exhausted from pretending to have all the answers. Someone desperate for something real. I knew exactly what to say. 7 words that would be replayed millions of times across the world. But before I share them, I want you to really hear this. If this story is speaking to your heart right now, leave a comment below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, join this family. We're just getting to the most powerful part. I stepped closer to her chair and spoke 7 words that would echo through eternity. The same grace is available to you. Something shattered behind her eyes. Without a word, Oprah stood from her chair. She walked toward me on legs that seemed barely able to hold her, and then she did something that would be replayed 500 million times around the world. She knelt down, right there on her own stage, in front of 12 million viewers. Tears streaming down her face as 40 years of walls came crashing down. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to stop being in control. I knelt beside her and placed my hand on her shoulder. That's exactly where he wants you. At the end of yourself. That's where we all have to start. I looked out at the audience. Men and women were weeping openly. People who had come for entertainment were witnessing something sacred. Blessed are the poor in spirit, I said softly, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. That means people who finally admit they have nothing to offer except their need. Oprah looked up at me. Will you pray with me? The question took my breath away. This woman who had interviewed presidents and kings was asking a struggling actor to pray with her on live television. Jesus, I began, here is your daughter Oprah. She's tired of being strong enough, smart enough, successful enough. She doesn't want to know about you anymore. She wants to know you. As I prayed, Oprah began to sob, not the controlled tears of a performer, the raw, broken crying of someone whose heart was finally opening. And in that studio where empires had been built on spiritual products, something real finally happened. "What happens now?" Oprah asked when the prayer ended. "Now you learn to walk with Jesus instead of improving on him. You discover that being his daughter is better than being your own God." In the weeks that followed, Oprah announced she was dismantling her spiritual courses. Hundreds of millions in revenue, gone overnight. But she said something that made it all worth it. "I spent my life selling people what they wanted. Now I want to share what they actually need." 6 months later, I received a photograph that brought me to my knees. Oprah sitting beside Michael's hospital bed in Detroit. No cameras, no publicity, just reading stories to a dying boy who had seen through her smile. Michael had lived longer than any doctor expected, and he told everyone who visited, "Miss Oprah found Jesus too, just like me." The video has been watched over 500 million times, not because it was dramatic, because it was true. People are hungry for something real. In a world of filters and facades, they recognized authenticity when they saw it. If this story touched your heart, maybe you're asking the same question Oprah asked, "What happens now?" The answer is simple. You take one step toward the one who has been waiting for you all along. Thank you for watching until the end. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what would you have said in that moment?